Good evening, everyone joining us for this webinar. My name is Dr. Jacqueline Service, and I'm joined with
Nicky Lock.
Nicky Lock here. Yes, we're both lecturers at St Mark's National Theological College Centre. Sorry, not a college; it's a centre in Barton in Canberra, which is part of the School of Theology at Charles Sturt University. We are glad that you've managed to join us this evening out of your busy schedules. We're going to talk about a really important topic this evening, and Nicky is someone who I really trust in this conversation. How many years' experience have you had?
Well, I've been working as a counsellor for over 30 years.
Okay.
And I do a lot of work with Christians with pornography addiction. So that's particularly my area that I'm interested in, working with people with pornography addiction. And I guess before we get into this, we just want to say that we will be tackling some tricky subjects tonight. And if you've got personal connection with these subjects, either because of your own struggles or struggles within your family, you may find it difficult. Just take care of yourself. If you need to take a break from listening to us, or do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And we have got some numbers at the end of the presentation for where you can seek help should you find that things have been really quite difficult for you to listen to some of this conversation this afternoon.
Great. All right. Well, so we're talking about addictions, and we're not just going to talk about pornography. We're going to talk about kind of the contours of addictive behaviours, what's going on with scientific understandings, but we're going to probably talk about it from a little bit of a different angle.
Yep.
Obviously, Nicky's got a counselling background, decades of counselling background and experience in this.
Yep.
I'm a theologian, so I'm looking at it from that theological, anthropological viewpoint. Like, how do we understand the human and what's happening with spirituality, with God in the equation here, particularly from a theological point of view. So let me start. Yeah.
Well, I guess just also to say, this is not a professional development event.
No.
We can't say everything that needs to be said this evening. So this is really just a place to get you thinking. We're going to point you to a few more resources. And of course, if you wanted to learn some more about subjects at St Mark's, through the way that Jackie and I are speaking, then we would love to see you come and study with us some of our counselling subjects or our theology subjects, because that's where you'll get really deeper and more detailed information than we can possibly give you in this
half
evening.
An hour. Yeah, exactly. We're going to have some time for questions at the end. So please, as we're talking, if you have questions that pop into your mind, pop them in the chat. And we have Michaela in the background who you can't see, but she is there, and she's going to collate all your comments, and we'll get the questions at the end.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're talking about addiction. Let's start, I guess, as an academic would start. What is a definition of addiction? What are we talking about?
Well, that's actually kind of a very, very difficult question to answer, Jackie, because there are a whole range of different definitions out there, depending on who you're talking to. If you go to people, proponents of the 12-step model, they will have a particular definition of what addiction is. There are a whole other lot of places where you can get different definitions of what addictions are. When I'm working with people, I work very much with what I call is a sort of working definition. And it's the idea that this behaviour and also the thinking around the behaviour is just taking up way too much of someone's time.
Okay.
It's filling up their life when they'd rather be doing other things. And particularly with those behaviours that are potentially harmful, there's this sense that for most people, well, I'm doing this thing which is potentially harmful and I don't want to keep on doing it, but I don't seem to be able to stop it. So there's this sense of...
So there's conflict at the centre of an addiction normally?
There is normally conflict.
Okay.
Although there, I guess for a number of people at various points in their addiction, they're in some kind of denial about how big the problem is.
Right.
And so often it might be family members who might point out to someone, say, hey, you're having a few too many wines at night, or how many hours you
Okay.
spent at the gym this week.
So we can become blind to our own habits of addiction.
Yeah.
We might say we make excuses, do we?
We can make excuses.
Right,
We might be just denying to others, but we might also be denying to ourselves how bad, how pervasive the issue has become in someone's life.
Okay, so what if I'm out there? I'm going to play devil's advocate a bit. What if I think, okay, you've got an addiction to something. That's your choice. You have a choice here. You're making a bad choice, so just stop the choice. How does that kind of like float in counselling?
Well, choice obviously has validity, and we could have the theological conversation about, God has given us free will. But I suppose by the time I get to see most people, by the time someone comes to counselling, they have struggled and wrestled with this issue sometimes for 10, 15, 20 years. And they've tried to stop to varying degrees of success. So it doesn't feel like a choice for people at that point. Okay. It feels like they actually don't have a choice. And of course, this is one of the first statements that the 12-step program people would say, that there's this powerlessness when one's got an addiction or is engaged in addictive behaviours.
Okay, so it's now become something where the concept of free will, is that even our Western or secular concepts of free will, your free will is now somehow unable to make a willed choice freely.
Because there's so much more involved.
Yeah.
And that's, if we start talking about different models of addiction, that at its simplest level, we could say many of these addictive behaviours are a bit like a habit.
Okay.
So it's like a learned behaviour. So my very naughty habit is I love having a cup of tea in bed in the morning. And if I don't get my cup of tea in bed in the morning, I can be a little bit out of sorts because I have made that habit part of my day.
Okay, all right.
And so if I had, if I've been in a hotel where I can't get a cup of tea, it's like, oh, I'm really missing my cup of tea.
So there's kind of like an environmental factor of the fact that if you're in a particular location, like for instance your bed, and you've got a particular you've almost trained yourself to
engage in this habit.
Okay.
And so obviously hopefully you would say my cup of tea in bed is not a particularly harmful habit. It's not occupying my whole life.
Yeah.
But it's that idea of habit and learned behavior that then really reinforces the addictive behavior. Okay. Because once the learned pathway is there in the brain, you only one image that people use, it's this idea of like you're walking through a paddock, and learned behavior, when you keep on walking through the paddock, you have this little pathway that's really easy to walk down, and it gets flattened.
Right, yeah.
And so the smallest thing can say, oh, I'll just go down that pathway.
Yeah.
And what happens in recovery is that people they find various ways, and we can talk about that, not to go down that pathway. And that allows that pathway to extinguish. Okay. So the learned behavior.
So they make a different pathway. So we're talking what, neurological?
We're talking neurological. We are talking literally physical changes.
Okay, so that's all that
in the brain. Neurophysiology.
Okay, okay. All right. So this is
where the choice bit goes.
Okay, so it's kind of like you have choice. There's some form of free will. Like I'm thinking here, like Augustine automatically comes to mind, 4th century theologian. He talks about that the will actually is not free, that it is a captive will, or it's a kind of a split will. We know the good we should do, and we want to do that, and yet we keep doing the things we don't want to do. I mean, the Apostle Paul talks about this as well. But there's a point at which habit and desire have inculcated into captivating your will.
Yes.
So that actually your will is enslaved now
Yep.
to something. So you're not free at all.
You're not free because you've actually got physical changes in your brain.
Okay. So you've got the choice, the learned, you're learning, you're habituating something,
Mm-hmm.
and then you literally are changing your brain.
Yes. Yes. And
Okay.
that's why some years ago I started talking to youth about using pornography because pornography, in the early days, there is an element of choice.
Yeah.
Before
okay.
those
Yep.
learned habits have become sort of ingrained in the brain pathways. And so it's really important to choose not to engage in things like that, because once you've engaged and then you start engaging regularly, that's what sets in train these little pathways through the paddock.
Yeah. So I have a little phrase that I always talk to my kids about, and I use it myself, that whatever you feed will grow.
Yep.
Whatever you feed, it will grow.
Yep.
And that means, that's obviously, I'm assuming, and we'll talk about recovery, and steps to recovery shortly, but I'm assuming it goes for both. It's both.
It is, but I guess I also want to have, this is where ideas around trauma come into. How do people begin engaging in addictive behaviours?
Yeah.
And often people begin engaging in addictive behaviours because they have some kind of emotional distress that's been often caused by harm done to them by others.
Yeah.
And they sort of have to work out, well, and this is almost unconscious, what is the best thing to do? And I certainly have a friend of mine who was addicted to alcohol. And she says that a teenager, she was a very unhappy teenager. She discovered that having a drink made her feel better. And so she carried on.
Takes the edge off.
It took the edge off.
Yeah.
And that then became a habit, a learned behaviour. The brain changes happened.
Yeah.
But in some ways, it was a bad choice, let's say.
Yeah.
But the choice was understandable given what was going on.
Okay. All right. So that we've got a number of things kind of happening here, but like, I guess for some people, and I've met people like this, that they don't care. like we're saying that, okay, this is an addiction and it's bad, but what's so bad about it? Like, can't people just do whatever they I was going to say the hell they want, but I just did say the hell they want. So can't people just do whatever they want? Why are we so concerned about addiction? Like, what is it? What's it doing if someone wants to?
Well, this is where if you're sort of talking in the public health sphere, there's the idea that harm reduction is a good premise to say, well, what harm is this addictive behaviour causing?
Okay.
Yeah. And harm can be to the individual, to their bodies, can be harm.
Okay. All right.
One of the worst addictions in terms of what is harming people in Australia is use of alcohol.
Yeah.
So there are more people using alcohol to levels which are actually harming them, harming their health, plus harming those around them. Because we know things like domestic violence are much worse when alcohol has been used.
Yeah.
So there's this idea. There are most addictive behaviours will either be harming the individual or will be harming those around them. Or if we look at the area of pornography, it's harming people who are you're supporting an industry which is an abusive industry.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what are some of the, I guess, self-harm things that people experience in addiction? I'm wondering, one of them, just through, again, observations, that I've seen people, when you start to question things, they seem to isolate more. Is that a common thing for family members to say that they've noticed a withdrawal of
definitely
someone?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, there's the obvious, alcohol and drugs are harming the body.
Yeah.
They're unhealthy behaviours. But there is all these emotional and psychological effects you're talking about as well. So people, and part of the withdrawal is because this person is engaged in the addiction, in the addictive behaviours, either in how am I going to engage in how am I going to get my next hit, whatever that is. It could be online shopping. Or, how am I going to do that? So that preoccupies their mind. So there's this preoccupation which takes people away from living in the now. And then there's the some of the actual changes in brain chemistry can cause some people describe it like a brain fog. And that when they actually have really reduced their use either to zero or much lower, that they begin to think more clearly. They're able to be more in the world. They're able to be more in relationship with people. And of course, in their spiritual lives, to be in relationship with God. You know, if they're in this withdrawn inner way of thinking, then it harms relationships.
Is that what we were talking earlier about, the pornified mind? Is that part of this brain fog for that particular type of addiction?
So there's a man in America called Andrew Bauman who writes about this really well. And he says, you know, unfortunately what's happened is it changes the way that, let's say, a man who's using pornography, how he looks at women and how he relates to women. And so, you know, many of the men that I've worked with have you know, with great shame, when they're sort of through their journey of recovery, realised that they have not been relating to women as a person. They've been relating to women as a sexual object. And
it's something that they can impose their own thoughts and fantasies upon when they are around.
Possibly that, but maybe not even that far. Maybe just they don't see them as a human being, as a person. They see them as as a sexual object. Not that they're necessarily going to use that sexual image, but
I mean, I remember disturbingly talking to a minister once, someone I respected highly, and I was wearing just a normal top dress in summer, and he suddenly got this glazed over look, and it was literally like looking at him, how his face would look with this kind of if he was watching pornography. It's literally what it looked like. And I started to feel so uncomfortable. And I'm like, does he?
What's going on here?
He didn't even know that he was looking at me like I'm sorry, like lecherously, I guess is how I would put it. And I was so disturbed by it. Like at some point he snapped out of it, but I saw this, so I didn't know what I still don't know what to quite do with that. But is that
can be part of it. So again, when men come to me and they're working with the issue of pornography, first of all, they think it's just the issue of looking at pornography and masturbating. But the more and more we talk about it, they come to realize that the way they're relating to the world and to women is all affected. And they really have to work on that part of it. It's like their whole mind has been captivated by this addiction.
So it's just really an enslaving thing that what I hear is people that want it, they don't want it in their life, and yet it's there, particularly, say, for someone of faith. How much does what's the role of guilt and shame and, because I know that I mean, you can feel guilt and shame about a number of things, but again, knowing how that tends to operate. Shame means people, again, withdraw and hide.
So it's really interesting that I think for many people, whatever their addiction, whatever they've struggled with, particularly people of faith, they know this is not how I should be living. And if they are told it is merely, say, lust or your sinful choices, that then actually can encourage someone to feel so guilty and so full of shame that they just hide. And they're not able then to deal with it because they're hiding from everybody. They're hiding from family members, they're hiding from their church community, they're hiding from God, and they're just not able to deal with it. And so it's really important, and this is what I find when people come and I work with them, for people to understand that addiction, of course, that's a really important element that needs to be dealt with at some point, but it's so much more. And to understand the mechanisms behind addiction, because that then gives people possibility for recovery. Because by the time people of faith, by the time they get to getting some professional support, they have prayed about it for hours. They've had people praying over them for hours, and they're still enslaved. And that makes them feel more guilty, because then they think, well, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my faith life? What's wrong with my relationship with God? Do I not really believe that, Jesus is going to heal me here?
Is that because, like, I'm assuming, like, say when you're driving a car, and if suddenly the car skids out, and people there might be in a country road, right? And there's one tree. There's no trees anywhere else. And inevitably that car will hit that tree, because they say we focus on the thing that we want to avoid. And in focusing on it, people actually drive towards it. So is there an element here that this idea of gritted will and I need to stop, it actually just reinforces the addiction, because you just keep focusing on the addiction and you haven't actually, what you need is a reorientation towards something.
We need to be given a different way to approach this. And there's some really interesting research recently, particularly coming out of the anxiety field, about what they talk about sticky thoughts. And the more you focus on, like if I say to you now, don't think about a pink elephant. Just do not think about a pink elephant.
No.
You've got a pink elephant in your head.
No,
You can't stop thinking about the pink elephant. And so to be keeping on focusing, I've got to stop this thing, I've got to stop this thing, is not always the most, it's not the simplest thing to do. So that's why you need to have a broader focus rather than just, I've got to stop. That's not to say that people do have to put in place some really serious measures to stop. Because if they don't stop, they keep on walking down that pathway in the paddock. And they don't give the brain the chance to recover, or their spirits to recover.
I mean, I guess, I'm thinking the Apostle Paul talks about how do you know when a thief is not a thief? And it's not when they stop what they're doing. It's when they learn to become generous. So you're actually, it's about replacing one habit, I guess, with if you can start a desire and a habit and reinforce it, then that same mechanism can, I'm assuming, be used for recovery.
Definitely, that's all part of recovery. So when people come to me, I say, do you want the good news or the bad news? Recovery is possible, but recovery takes a lot of hard work, and it's going to take commitment, and you're going to need a lot of support when you're in recovery. You're going to need professional support. You may choose to join a support group. Your family members may need some support, because your addictive behaviours may well have been impacting the family. So you do need a lot of support in order to be able to go on the journey of recovery. And limiting the addictive behaviours, harm reduction, or ideally for many addictions down to full abstinence, is part of the early part of the journey, because as long as those pathways, as long as you keep on acting out, then you keep on activating those pathways.
And what about, again, in some like, I guess, Christian thinking, there is the role, and we don't talk about it very much in the West, but the role of spiritual aspects, like evil spirits and demonic activity and aspects like that. Does that play a role where there is, something here that actually, because we tend to in the West at post-Enlightenment turn everything into like
psychology,
psychology, or it becomes just it's Pelagian in terms of what I mean by that is we just need to know what to do, and then we just do it like a model, and if we just do that, and it's like this kind of thing that we do, and there's no kind of enabling grace of God in it, so it becomes a human endeavor.
Yeah.
But even just I'm thinking in terms of behaviors, is there a role for spiritual deliverance or anything like that, do you think here?
Well, I think when we chatted preparing for today, I told you, I mean, I lived in East Africa for 4 years in a rural area, and saw very real evidence of witch doctors and spiritual practices that were very harmful to people. So I would never fully discount that.
Yeah.
But I think in the kind of world we live in the West, there is much less of that activity. So it wouldn't be top of my list as a place to go.
Yeah. So it might be something more like I kind of think with things like spiritual elements like that, it's more like a, pus in a wound, but you can clean the pus out, but if you don't deal with the actual wound, so you were talking about trauma and things like that before. So you'd be heading there before you
I would be looking for trauma, trauma history, before I was looking for demonic activity.
Yeah.
And I don't have my mind composed completely to that. But you mentioned the word enabling grace.
Yeah.
And I think I know some of the people that I've worked with say, just to be able to sit here and talk about this with you, Nicky, is a graceful moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and it's not just about me, but it's about them finding the space where they experience God's enabling grace.
Yeah.
And that they can actually bring all the yuckiness of what's been going on in their lives out into the open in a safe way, in order to be able to go on that cleansing pathway that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that a lot of it is as well that, I guess, in the church particularly, I don't think we sit well with pain very well. So we seek to cover pain and not let God into the pain.
Yeah. I've sat with clients, clergy who've finally at some point in the work we've been doing have come to face that there were things that happened in their childhood that were incredibly painful, and they never addressed, and that wound is still sitting there. And so the wound does need to be uncovered. There needs to be mourning and healing around that wound, and really bringing God and Jesus into that picture. Often it's around, am I a worthwhile human being? There's a really deep wound around that from childhood experiences. Yeah. And so whilst that people know in their heads, of course, they know everything in their heads about, they could quote the verses of the Psalms about, that they are worthwhile human beings.
But unless you believe.
But at a deep heart level, that has not been addressed.
Yeah, I can imagine that. There are these. We don't often live in a society where, especially for men, I don't think they don't talk so often about some of these deep things, and you need safe people such as yourself and
not even realizing. For example, I grew up in a middle class home where achieving at school was seen as a really important thing, and if you didn't get, I know I was smart, but if you didn't get top marks, then it was, well, why didn't you get top marks? That actually harmed me. And in some ways, my parents, I know they were actually trying to encourage me. They weren't trying to be harmful.
Right, but you took it on board.
But I took it on board as criticism, feeling less than.
See, that's how I would view the more kind of, I guess, spiritual captivity element, is that I think actually what happens is, for many people of faith, that we start taking on the lies that we tell ourselves. Like, we tell ourselves so many lies, and that's why looking at scripture for me has been so important, is because when I then look at scripture and it tells me that I'm beloved of God, and that God will provide and all these things, and or that it'll tell me it'll tell me truth.
Yeah.
To displace the lie.
Yeah.
But I find, though, there is a renewal that can happen by reminding yourself of truth. But there is usually we slip back into the false belief about ourselves or the lie that we kind of need to keep regenerating. Is there, again, I'm just thinking like, so I relapse in thinking about lies, in my own life. Is relapse a component here?
Relapse is a normal part of recovery.
Yeah.
And it's very distressing for people because particularly by the time they've got to the professional, they're really determined to change. And unfortunately, relapse is normal.
Okay. So why do you say it's normal?
Because I think people haven't completed their work. They haven't done the deep heart work that they need to do.
All right. So we avoid.
Yeah.
We do it to a certain point, but we've kind of hidden certain things that maybe they're just no-go zones. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
But actually,
they don't even know they're there.
Right. They don't know they're there.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, again, this is my own experience. I feel like God you'll go so far, and then the Lord will take you back to things because actually He wants to set you free from things.
Yes.
And often we, again, believe like, no, I can't talk about that. I can't go there because I don't know. There's, again, maybe it's shame and guilt. I don't know, but it's normally having to push into these painful areas. Is if we do it, we'll find freedom.
Yes.
Yeah.
At its simplest level.
Yeah.
It's not easy though. It's kind of simple, but not easy.
Okay, so there's simple things, but actually hard yards of work.
And proper support to do it.
Okay, so tell me a bit about, I guess, support. What kind of, there might be people, watching the webinar.
So I think there are various levels, and it depends on how embedded and how serious the addictive behaviour is.
Yeah.
So for some people, having an accountability partner and a prayer partner and maybe doing some reading around whatever the issue is and really being faithful in that space of accountability and prayer, that's sufficient for someone to actually be able to get out, stop the addictive behaviour and start replacing, because sometimes, that they talk a lot of, particularly in the 12-step program, they talk about being, hungry, lonely, angry, sad. That's what happens is when people feel those emotions, they use the addictive behaviour to deal with those things.
Okay.
But actually working out, well, when I'm hungry or lonely or angry or sad, I need to do something different.
Right. Okay.
So it's replacing that addictive behaviour with something more healthy and more nourishing for the person.
And so I'm assuming that some people, what if you go to someone and say, I've noticed this, I'm concerned, gambling, it seems to be increasing, and they just go, and I think a lot of young men are being like, there's a lot of advertising about gambling for focusing on young men.
Yeah.
So I've got sons, I'm worried about them with that.
Yeah.
But it's all normalized. So what if they just go, no, I don't have a problem, like there's no problem here, but
I think that's
what do you do with
it's a really difficult one, because at the end of the day, the person with the addictive behaviour, they are the only one that can really deal with it. They have to take charge of it. They have to take responsibility for it. So it's not to say that people shouldn't say, I've noticed this is increasing. Sometimes you can strengthen that message by saying, you're spending 30% of our household budget on gambling. That's the problem for me.
Well,
so to be talking about impact of the addictive behaviour on the person commenting, or you were talking about people distancing, to say, I've noticed you've been really distanced the last 6 months. We've lost our intimacy, our relationship. What's going on here? But still, at the end of the day, the person with the addictive behaviour has to make the decision. That is an element of choice.
Right.
a choice
Okay.
point to say, I am going to do something about this.
Okay. So there has to come a point in a person for them to admit they have. I mean, I guess you cannot heal what you can't acknowledge.
That's
So there needs to be a point of acknowledgement that there is something destructive about the behaviour, either to themselves
hopefully.
or to
I
other
mean,
people.
sometimes people will go and get help when a family member has said,
Mm.
you must go and get help.
Yeah, right.
And
okay.
that's
so some people throw the gauntlet down.
Yeah.
And they put up with it enough, and
Yeah.
they say, you need to deal with this.
Yeah.
Or
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some people say, well, you know, my husband says I must do something about this, so that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
But in those, I mean, if someone comes to me like that in their early stages of counselling, it's like, okay, so your wife or your husband has said you need to get help. What do you think? Can we talk about this?
Yeah.
Can we talk about how this is affecting your life?
Yeah.
And how this is affecting your loved ones, and how this is affecting your relationship with God?
Yeah.
And if they're willing, I mean, I always think at that stage, the fact they've even come means they're half ready to make the choice.
Yeah. Okay. But even that step to
make the appointment,
that's probably huge for some people.
To go online and join a 12-step group online.
Yeah.
That is a huge
So
step.
what about with, like, I've got a dear friend and her partner drank himself. My dear friend of mine as well drank himself to death at the age of 47. And she had that conversation with him
countless
many
times.
Yep, to the point where, you know, the gauntlet was laid down with the relationship because it was safety issues with children. And but he just drank himself to death. I was hugely grieving because just thinking, why this is just such a waste. Like you've got these beautiful children, you've got this beautiful wife, you've got this amazing career, and yet he was
just not able to do that. Yeah. And I guess we will never know his story, what it was about him and his life. That he just couldn't make a choice for good.
No. I mean, that's what I guess, you know, I'm glad we're doing this, because ultimately, I guess as working in a theological centre, we want to see the flourishing of people, and in particularly, you know, in counselling. That's what we want to see. What kind of statistics can you tell me about hope here? Like, do people, like my friend was not a good statistic.
I don't know that I actually know the recovery statistics.
Yeah.
Or
that just anecdotally in your office?
I mean, I do know from people I work with, and there's a Christian 12-step group meets at the cathedral in Sydney over Commerce. What are they? I think I've got it on the slide.
Yeah.
They when people make choices for recovery, recovery is certainly possible.
Yeah.
But it is about making choices for recovery.
Yeah. Okay. So there is hope.
There's definitely hope.
Yeah.
Even and there is research around the brain disease model that and people talk about a lot. There's a whole lot of mental health issues that you have a genetic predisposition to something, and then it's environmental factors that actually trigger the mental health condition.
Yeah.
And that certainly is posited to be true in certain drug addictions and alcohol addictions, nicotine addiction, that there is a certain a genetic predisposition to it. But even with a genetic predisposition, it is possible for recovery and management.
Yeah. So how important is love in this? So self-love, but also the love of the church community, the faith community, friends.
Yeah. So I'm not. We're kind of running out of time.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how much time
we'll have some questions in a minute
to talk about it, but
you just tell us when, Michaela.
I think it's got to be that combination of people talk about tough love.
Yeah.
You can't just love willy-nilly and say whatever you're doing is absolutely fine with me.
Yeah.
unlike your friend with her husband, there are times for setting boundaries with people, and that's actually part of the love.
Yeah.
Because part of setting the boundary is saying, I need you to do something about this. And that I mean, if your friend's husband had been able to, we don't know what stopped him, but that would have been for his good if he'd actually been able to enter a recovery pathway.
And I think been to rehab.
So it's a fine balance.
Yeah. So okay, I think we've got some questions that we're going to open up to you guys. Before we do, I do want to just briefly mention that at St Mark's we are part of the School of Theology at Charles Sturt University. So the degrees that we offer can not only help you if you're wanting to do extra study to, maybe become a pastoral counsellor, equip yourself in your ministry, in personally or in work. We offer degrees that are awarded through Charles Sturt University. We've got some great lecturers. You can mix your studies of counselling with theology as well. And we're really at St Mark's, we're really wanting to serve people because we're living in a more disintegrating kind of society where we need to be able to have real depth to our study and how we can actually walk in the world alongside people. So I encourage you that if you are interested in learning more about our courses, please do get in contact. We are St Mark's National Theological Centre. You can find us on the web or email. The email is, I did write it down somewhere, it's admin@stmarks.edu.au. Yes. Now, did you want to talk about the resources?
Yeah, look, I've just put in a really few resources. There are so many resources out there for all sorts of different addictions, but this is just a few places to start. The two books in that list are really helpful. The second book is a secular book, but it's also really helpful in understanding the sort of mechanics of addiction. Andrew Bauman writes very well about masculinity and pornography, and then the Christian 12-step group. Then could we have the next slide, Michaela, please? Just these are some crisis lines, and also the bottom three, there are 12-step groups. And of course, you need to remember 12-step groups were started by Christians. And so it very much, although it's not overtly a Christian ministry these days, very much the whole idea of relating to your higher power is completely embedded in the 12-step movement. Not everybody loves the 12-step movement, but it is a very helpful place to get some information.
And again, before we turn to our really important questions, I'm just going to remind you, we've got another webinar coming up about another pretty interesting topic, and it's about how to keep your humanity in the AI age. So we're going to go into looking at artificial intelligence, what it means for the concept of being human from a theological perspective. So please do join us. I'm going to be joined with Dr. Amy Erickson, who has got a lot of interesting thoughts. And we probably might disagree on some things, me and Amy, but I'm not so anti ChatGPT. But please do come. That's on October 27. All right. So let's hear the questions. Okay, we've got one here first. Thanks, Clement, for joining us. How do mental health challenges like depression impact addictions and choices?
Yeah, so mental health, depression, anxiety, neurodivergence conditions like ADHD, they really they complicate the issue of dealing with addiction. So we use this clinical word comorbidity, that you can have both. You can have depression and you can have an addiction, and there just needs to be a careful sorting out of how did the different parts of that, a person's mental health status need to be treated. Always, of course, when you're working with people of faith, integrated with their faith understanding of the world.
And what about with this one? I'm just thinking, like with ADHD and dopamine, can there be a link between, like, with
we haven't
didn't
mentioned
really
the
touch-
dopamine word. So dopamine is the pleasure reward neuro chemical, and it's disrupted in various mental health conditions. Depression, there'd be less dopamine. ADHD, sort of kind of seeking dopamine as part of the condition. So yeah, complicated.
Okay, but it's also about, I guess this question's good because it's about actually more about really self-awareness of understanding and being open to who you are, that if you do have depression, you need to, in a way, acknowledge that, linked with the addiction. So it's, again, this is acknowledging.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes things, particularly people would say that ADHD makes it harder to deal with addictions because of the issues of impulse control that come with ADHD. And you could say someone who's struggling with depression may be lacking in energy and motivation, and so it's actually harder for them to tackle the issue of addiction because they're struggling with energy and motivation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great question, Clement. Any other questions here? Danielle? Hi. Okay. So, does self-harming fit in with this idea of addiction?
I think you could say it fits in the way I've been talking about, that people use addictive behaviours and addictive substances as a way of soothing emotional pain. And we have quite a lot of research that shows that self-harming is a behaviour that helps an individual deal with emotional pain. Again, it's not a great choice, but it does help short term for someone. So yes, in some ways it does fit with addiction.
So again, just even with your answer there, makes me think that it seems that what people are desiring is maybe something good, which is to feel happy, to feel soothed,
relief,
to feel right. So so they're seeking after a good, but they seem to be doing it in a disordered way.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, I like that. That's neat.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that would be, again, Augustine's disordered desires.
Yeah.
Again, it's that our desires, again, some of these desires are natural and normal, but they're fulfilled.
Sometimes it's people's best way of dealing with the situation. So like if you're a teenager growing up in a dysfunctional home and it's incredibly emotionally difficult and you have access to pornography that makes you feel better, well, you go and use pornography. So
this self-harming is to, again, probably to feel something,
to feel or to numb.
Or to numb.
It has a numbing
all right
function.
So it's that same thing. It's trying to address something far deeper.
Yes.
And that's what we've got to go to, is what's that deeper element and get into the healing of that. Yeah. Thanks, Danielle, for that question. Okay, so Narelle, hi. What is the role or the impact of social media use with addiction and propensity for addiction? Is it an addiction in itself which amplifies other addictions? Yeah, good question.
Yeah, well, social media certainly is an addiction for many, and all of us actually have to look at how we're using social media. If you are, I mean, I use social media, and if you're using social media regularly, you will have reprogrammed your brain slightly in that deep attention is harder if you're using a lot of social media. And so that whole idea of changing the attention span could possibly impact how somebody is able, either how they're regarding their addiction or how they're controlling their addiction or how they progress along the journey of recovery and addiction. So yes, I think overuse of social media will certainly affect how somebody is able to respond to addiction.
Interesting question, because it's almost like a double it could be late. So you could have an addiction to gambling, but then you've got the overlay of social media.
Yeah, well, you make
feeding you the same
social media, the algorithms feed it, and of course the whole issue of online gambling, online pornography, online shopping. It's a hidden addiction. Like, although alcohol statistically is the most used addictive substance, these other addictive behaviors are hidden. And that's why they're a particular issue in the Christian community.
Yeah.
Because people engage in these hidden addictions.
And then we just joke about, so for instance, shopping.
Yeah.
Like when you said online shopping, I could feel my brain almost making a joke. It was like, oh, I'd like to have that addiction. But actually, and that's just because we normalize it. We don't realize how bad that can be.
Yeah. And we don't realize, like, I mean, I do online shopping, and yeah, it's kind of nice. You press that button and you know the thing's going to arrive on your front doorstep.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's got 20 pink jumpers, they've got a real problem, and they can't stop. They just keep on shopping. Yeah.
It's almost like, again, I'm thinking of Blaise Pascal here. He was a French mathematician, 17th century, also a profound Christian thinker as well. He talks about that we distract ourselves with entertainment and pleasures and etc. because we don't want to actually face the emptiness in our life.
Yes. That would fit this story. Yeah. But that's not to say we mustn't push it too far and say it's actually okay to enjoy a glass of wine.
Yeah, no. You don't want to.
You don't want to say we can't have any. Yeah. In fact, one of the things about the whole dopamine addiction thing is the reason why people start using more and more of an addictive substance or an addictive behavior is because the natural dopamine production is reduced when you're engaged in these really stimulatory activities. Yeah. So that's why you have to reduce the use of the stimulating activities in order that your normal dopamine is a good thing.
All right.
God has given us dopamine so that we can have pleasure in the world.
Yeah.
And pleasure in Him.
But if you are hitting it, say, with social media or some other addiction, then you get more dopamine, but then
you're actually knocking out the system which makes dopamine naturally.
Right, and then you need more social media or more like higher levels to keep the same high of the dopamine. Yeah. Phil, thank you for your question. Is addiction to gaming as much about perspective of observer and the one involved in gaming?
So that's back to my definition that we talked about right at the beginning. Is the amount of time and energy that the person is putting into gaming harming the rest of their life? Yeah. You know, how many hours is a person spending gaming? Yeah. Does that mean they're not relating to their family? They're not mowing the grass? What are they not doing because they're gaming? Yeah. And also I think it is also about, can you stop? So, and what would it be like not to do it? So, I admit my cup of tea, I don't want to stop it. So if the gaming or any of these addictive behaviors, it's really hard to stop. You're really cranky when you stop it. That's maybe a sign that you're using it too much.
Yeah, and also it's maybe also it's okay. There's this perspective of the observer and the one involved in gaming. Like so the one involved in the gaming, who I'm assuming in this kind of maybe scenario might be getting says, I'm fine, I'm just gaming, leave me alone. And the other person is saying, no, this has become a problem. I wonder whether there's something here about pausing and considering the other.
That's part of it. Yeah. And I think the other thing we haven't mentioned is that if you get your highs entirely from gaming, online shopping, going to the gym, it means that you find that you take less pleasure in the rest of life. And that is a warning sign as well. If the only thing that really gives you pleasure is the addictive behavior, that's a sign that you've actually worn out your normal dopamine system.
Right. So there are warning signs here. And so the warning signs can come through a perspective from an external observer. Yeah. But it can also, if you
for yourself to start
if you like you said, there are certain things, if you're observing within yourself, then you might want to take a pause. Thank you, Phil. Sam, what is a helpful thing to do if you're a family member of someone with addiction?
Yeah, I think we've touched on this already, and this is kind of where the tough love issue comes in. It's about actually being open and honest with the person and trying to communicate not in an angry way, but to say, I've noticed this is what to talk about the facts. I've noticed that you're spending 4 hours a night gaming, that we're not talking to each other anymore when you come home from work. Or I've noticed that, when you go to bed, we used to, have a little chat with each other or pray together before we went to sleep. That's not happening. And then for the family member to say, and actually that's really distressing me. It's really distressing me that our relationship is being harmed, or it distresses me when I see what you like after you finish your bottle of red wine after dinner. And to say I would really like it if you would go and see someone and talk about what's going on.
Okay, Marshall, thank you. Thanks, Nicky and Danielle. I really appreciate the conversation. My question is, how do you address the spiritual or sin dimension of negative behaviours like pornography use?
Yeah.
I value the insights into neurological replacement techniques and the role of background triggers and traumas, but even if the brain is retrained and past issues are resolved, there still remains the deeper issue of the heart. What does the heart need?
It's a great question, Marshall. And in my experience, for many people with various addictions, it's in the 12-step program. There's a step that says make a fearless inventory about all those people you've harmed and go and make reparation. But I found often some really significant work with clients when they really face the depth of, it's a word I don't like, but depravity, their sinfulness in what they've been engaging in, and with encouragement to either through some kind of private, again, this sounds a bit strange for some faith traditions, confession, the idea of talking to God about the sinfulness of their behavior, how many people they've harmed, and then really to be able to experience in, again, we haven't talked about this, but ideally in a sort of felt sense of God's forgiveness of them, because many of these addictive, well, in fact, all of these addictive behaviors involve the body, they involve our physiology. And so experiencing God's grace after a real time of examination and confession is a hugely important part of this work.
And I think actually that often if we don't have a doctrine of sin or a real understanding of that, no, sin is that bad, sin is that serious, evil is evil, and sin is sin, and it's destructive, and how destructive it is. If we don't actually have that understanding, then you can't apply the balm of grace and redemption. And this is the thing, is that I think about Paul, when Paul says, the Apostle Paul talks about, the things I don't want to do, I keep doing, and the things I don't want to do, did I say that right? The things I do want to do, I don't do, and the things I don't want to do, I keep doing. And you can feel Paul like having this conundrum in the scriptures, and then his answer is, thank God for Jesus Christ, because he knows it's only the redemptive, freeing grace of God and the blood of Christ and the resurrection life that can come spiritually to our mind, body, spirit, all of us as a whole person. It's only, he says, it's only through Christ. And then it's like Paul lays himself flat to say, I need you. And so there kind of is this, I think there is you have to understand the depth of the sin problem, and then the actual the strength of the addressing of it in Christ. So I do think.
So I've had clients write a 3, 4, 5-page confession. And sometimes they've taken that to their minister at their church. and said, I need to read this. This is my confession to God, and particularly with pornography, because the harm goes so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to read this out before God as part of my, essential part of my recovery.
Yeah. So I think it's absolutely something that's, I think, needed and freeing. Confession and repentance is a freeing thing, and we can't have restoration in relationships with other people that we've hurt without repentance either. Thank you, Marshall. Okay, time for one more question if someone has it, and then we're going to end. Okay, Daniel, what does Jesus say about the person experiencing addiction? How ought that inform the way a supporting person responds to them?
Well, I would frame it, and Jackie can frame it in the theological language, that it's about that tough love thing. It's about understanding the person and how Jesus knows how that person has got to that space. They know their history, they know their deep wounds, they know about the bad choices they've made. But it's this fine balance between loving the person and showing them grace. And this is what God does for us. We are sinful creatures that we continue, and He's still loving us and showing us grace. But there's also this idea of limits and boundaries. And
and I think Jesus invites everyone to Himself, and is says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened." But then He says, "Take my yoke upon you, take my teachings, my way upon you." So it's not just this kind of like, oh yeah, everything's fine. It's He loves you and invites you, but He will not leave you as you are. And that is such for me, a hopeful promise that God, He accepts you how you are, but He won't leave you how you are. And that's the gracious gift of God, to never leave us how we are. And He offers us a different way of being in life. So, and maybe it's some of that is that for someone supporting someone,
that
is to
balance
have
between saying, I love you, but I really want you to do something about your addiction.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us for this hour. I hope it's been a blessing to you. Again, if you want to learn more about studying at St Mark's, doing a single subject with us that deals with counselling issues, theological issues, please email us here. The email is now on the screen. But if you want to reach out about further things to do with addiction, the slides we showed before with some of those helplines as well are there for you. We hope this has been a beginning conversation for you. Please join us for another webinar.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for being here.